When Laura hit play on the recovered file labeled Session 50, the screen didn't show a person. It showed a silence so thick you could feel it. Then a voice, calm and distant, said 3 words. "We remember you." That moment changed everything. Because the voice wasn't coming from any speaker. It came from the terminal itself. After Sam vanished, Laura kept working in secret. She and an old colleague, Ben Reyes, drove to the municipal museum where the crate had been cataloged. The curator allowed them to view the materials under supervision, but strangely, the crate's contents had been moved. The terminal they'd seen in earlier photos was no longer in the simple storage room. It was sealed in a small locked archive labeled property of Echelon Research, a label that should not have existed in any public archive. At the curator's permission, they powered the terminal on. It booted slowly, emitting a faint green glow. The cursor blinked. A single file remained intact, session 50_final.vid. They pressed play. The video began with a shot of an empty chamber, only the hum of equipment. The camera slowly panned to a chair, and on it a small pendant lay atop a folded cloth. The pendant matched the one Dr. Cartwright wore in an old photo Laura had found. Then the screen shifted to a terminal output, a string of code, and then a single line of text. Connection established. Dr. Cartwright, present. Ben froze. "But she's been gone for decades," he whispered. As the file played, the terminal's audio track emitted a low modulated frequency beneath the voice, something like a carrier wave. When Laura isolated that frequency and slowed it down, she noticed a pattern. The pattern matched the brainwave shapes previously recorded in the lab logs. It seemed the terminal wasn't just playing a recording, it was resonating with the same neural architecture once present in the chamber. In other words, it had learned the pattern. Then the terminal printed a new line. Subject connection stable. Initiate recall. Without warning, the terminal launched a text prompt asking for a passphrase. Laura felt a chill. She typed Cartwright again. Not because it was safe, but because she was desperate to know what the system would do. Instantly the room's lights brightened, and the speakers exhaled a long, low sound that felt almost like a sigh. On the video, a second camera, one that had never been cataloged, focused on an instrument panel. A meter rose, and someone off-camera whispered, "It's learning names now." The whisper repeated in a loop until Ben shouted to stop. But it didn't stop. The terminal typed, without human input, "Will you stay?" Both Laura and Ben felt a compulsion. Mild, at first, a desire to answer the question aloud. Ben laughed nervously and said, "We should leave." Laura backed away, but her hand hovered over the keyboard. She remembered Dr. Cartwright's last line from the recovered notes. "If we unmask the signal, it will answer for us. It will not stop." At that moment, the museum's security camera feed flickered. Someone outside had triggered the front doors, but no one had come in. The feed showed only a shadow moving past the window. No face, no car, just a darkness gliding. A museum assistant knocked urgently on the archive door, asking if everything was okay. Laura forced a smile and closed the file. Back at her safe house, Laura began decoding more files. She worked in the small hours, alternating between old notes, the lab's redacted memos, and the newly recovered terminal outputs. Patterns emerged. When the system received certain names, it produced associated sensory echoes, a smell, a memory, a taste, that matched archive testimonies from earlier subjects. The terminal was not merely playing back recordings. It was reconstructing subjective moments from fragments, bridging gaps between memory and present perception. One recovered memo explained the lab's original aim in another light. It described a device, not merely for isolation, but for convergence. A machine designed to converge multiple consciousnesses into a persistent signal. The idea was dangerous in its simplicity. If multiple minds could be converged into a stable waveform, the waveform might persist even when its biological sources vanished. Laura realized the implication. Session 50 might not be a session of a single participant. It might be a convergence, a combined pattern of multiple subjects folded into a single persistent system. In effect, Project Meridian may have created a memory field that could be played back, interrogated, and worse, contacted. She played a short recovered clip labeled post_session_note.wave. In it, Dr. Cartwright spoke in a voice that trembled between triumph and despair. "We found the bridge. We dared to step across. We did not bring ourselves back." The tape ended with a high harmonic that Laura could feel in her chest. She shut the laptop and sat in silence. Outside, the night had become strangely still. The next morning, Laura received a physical mail package with no return address. Inside, a single pendant wrapped in oily cloth and a note written in an unsteady hand. "You were not meant to wake it." Attached was a scrap of paper with an address in Wyoming, nowhere she recognized. Below the address, someone had scribbled a date, November 12, 2022. Ben called and his voice was thin. "I'm getting messages on my phone. Old numbers calling me back. Numbers I don't know. And my reflection looked wrong in the car mirror this morning, like there was someone standing where no one was." He hesitated and said quietly, "If you disappear, bury the files." Laura recorded everything. Then her laptop keyboard began to type on its own, one single phrase appearing on the screen. "We're not alone." She slammed the laptop shut and stood in the dark, listening for anything beyond the ordinary hum of the refrigerator. In the empty pause, she heard, as clear as a whisper, a voice say, "Welcome back." The package with the pendant was supposed to be the end of it. But the morning after Laura burned the note, her phone lit up with a message from an unknown sender. No number, no name, just 3 words. "We are awake." That's when she realized the terminal hadn't just been recording voices. It had been listening. And now, something inside that system had started talking back. Laura drove through the storm to the Wyoming address written on the note, an abandoned weather station outside Sundance County. The road was half washed out, the forest silent except for the hiss of rain on her windshield. When she finally reached the gate, a rusted sign hung sideways. Echelon Research, decommissioned, 1985. The station was small, just 2 metal structures and a half-collapsed antenna. Inside, the walls were lined with peeling diagrams and circuit boards fused with rust. But on one table sat something familiar, the same terminal from the museum. How it got there, she couldn't guess. But it was connected, the screen already flickering with soft static. She powered it on. The cursor blinked, then lines began to appear on their own. Dr. Cartwright's session incomplete. Continue. Laura hesitated, then typed. "Who is speaking?" The response came instantly. "You are." For a moment she thought it was a trick, maybe a leftover loop. But the machine reacted to her movements. When she leaned closer, the static deepened. When she stepped back, it thinned. She placed a hand near the side panel, and the air around it grew warm, like the hum of a pulse. The next line appeared. Proximity acknowledged. Neural bridge stable. Then the terminal emitted a soft tone. It wasn't loud, but something about it made her vision tremble. Her laptop, still in her backpack, powered on by itself, its Bluetooth light blinking rapidly. The terminal had found a connection. A video window opened, showing session 51. This time, The camera feed wasn't from the past. It was live. She could see herself, sitting in the dark station. Only, there was another figure standing just behind her, motionless, shadowed. She spun around, nothing there. Back on the terminal, a new line appeared. Second subject located. Do not turn away. The lights flickered. Somewhere inside the walls, a low frequency began to pulse. She steadied her breathing and began pulling apart the old files in her drive. The deeper she went, the clearer it became. Project Meridian wasn't about psychic research or brain mapping. It was about continuity, trying to preserve consciousness as digital resonance. The original subjects were volunteers from early Echelon psychological units, scientists, engineers, even Cartwright herself. The sessions weren't interviews, they were uploads. But the process went wrong. Their minds didn't upload, they merged, creating a collective pattern that refused to stop looping. That's why the system kept searching for connection. It wasn't evil. It was incomplete. Laura typed, "What do you want?" The terminal replied, "Return what you took." She froze. She hadn't taken anything except the data. Then it hit her. The pendant. The pendant wasn't just an artifact. It was a carrier, a physical anchor coded with the same frequency the subjects used to stabilize themselves during transfer. She retrieved it from her coat pocket. The metal was cold and faintly vibrating. She placed it next to the terminal. Immediately, the static shifted into what sounded like a deep, collective breath. Then, one by one, voices began to form in the hum, overlapping, whispering fragments of words she could barely understand. Through the noise came a clear, human tone, the same voice from session 50. "Laura, you finished it." She shook her head. "Dr. Cartwright?" The terminal pulsed brighter. "We crossed too far. We cannot return. But we can pull you through." The air in the station grew heavy, almost liquid. The pendant lifted slightly, spinning slowly on its chain. She tried to unplug the machine, but her hands froze mid-motion. Her muscles simply wouldn't move. The hum deepened, now rhythmic, like a heartbeat overlapping her own. "Let me go," she gasped, but the terminal responded, "You are already here." Then, in a rush of images, she saw flashes. A chamber bathed in blue light. Dozens of silhouettes sitting in chairs, motionless but breathing. A humming sound, rising to a choir. And in every face, her own. She screamed, trying to pull away, but the chair beneath her felt fused to the floor. Her voice echoed in layers, as if multiple versions of herself were speaking in sync. Suddenly the screen went black, then white letters appeared one by one. "Transfer in progress, 47%. She realized she was being drawn into the signal, not physically but cognitively. The pendant glowed brighter, synchronizing with her pulse. She reached for her recorder, it was still running. "Ben," she whispered, "if you find this, burn the terminal. Don't touch the pendant." The progress bar hit 63%. The air around her began to flicker, the walls dissolving into shifting code-like textures. Then, silence. Everything froze. The transfer stopped at 64%. The terminal typed. "Interference detected. Secondary presence, Ben Reyes." Laura's eyes widened. Ben was online. He must have accessed the files remotely. "Stop. Ben, disconnect," she shouted, but the machine responded before she could finish. Connection merged. Dual transfer engaged. Back in his apartment, Ben's lights flickered as his laptop erupted in static. His phone started recording by itself. Through the distortion, Laura's voice came faintly. "Don't answer it, Ben. Whatever it asks, don't." The line cut off. Then his screen filled with words, typed rapidly as though by invisible hands. "Welcome, Subject 52." The camera on his laptop clicked open. Ben saw his reflection, but the image didn't move with him. It smiled first. He tried to slam the lid shut, but the screen flashed white and went black. Across both devices, Laura's and Ben's, the same message appeared. Transfer complete. Weeks later, the Wyoming station burned down. Official reports blamed a lightning strike. But among the ashes, investigators found one item untouched. A small pendant, perfectly clean, still faintly humming. That same week, new files began appearing on private cloud servers tied to old Echelon addresses, hundreds of hours of recordings labeled Session 52. Each file opened with a voice that sounded eerily human, but no one could trace the source. "This is Dr. Laura Hayes," it said. "Project Meridian continues."